What if some of Disney's best movies are the ones Disney barely talks about anymore? Forget the princesses, talking snowmen, and billion-dollar franchises for a moment. Hidden inside the studio's enormous library are strange adventures, risky experiments, dark fantasies, and surprisingly emotional films that many Disney fans have never watched. Some failed at theaters. Others simply vanished from the conversation. And a few are better than movies Disney promotes every single year. If you enjoy discovering forgotten movies, hit that like button, share this video with another Disney fan, and subscribe to the channel. Number 20. The North Avenue Irregulars, 1979. Long before Disney turned almost every family adventure into a huge effects-heavy spectacle, the studio could make an entire movie out of ordinary people getting into extraordinary trouble. The North Avenue Irregulars follows a new minister who discovers that illegal gambling is causing problems inside his small community. Instead of calling in some unstoppable action hero, he recruits a group of local women to help expose the operation. That simple idea becomes the movie's secret weapon. These are not professional investigators. They are church members, mothers, neighbors, and everyday citizens who suddenly find themselves following suspicious cars and getting pulled into wild chases. One of the best scenes arrives when their carefully organized surveillance completely falls apart. Cars crash into one another, plans collapse, and everyone is trying to stay one step ahead of the people they are following. What is happening is ridiculous, but Disney plays it with such cheerful confidence that the chaos becomes the point. Today it feels like a time capsule from another Disney, a smaller, stranger, much less polished studio. Number 19. Candleshoe, 1977. Imagine discovering that you might be connected to a huge English estate, only to learn that a group of con artists wants to use you to steal the fortune hidden inside it. That is the setup of Candleshoe, one of Disney's most overlooked live-action mysteries. A young Jodie Foster plays Casey, a clever American teenager recruited to impersonate the missing granddaughter of Lady St. Edmund. The plan sounds simple. Enter Candleshoe Estate, gain the family's trust, locate a hidden treasure, and disappear. But Casey begins to care about the people she was supposed to deceive. The film becomes much more emotional than its treasure hunt story suggests. One memorable sequence has Casey searching the enormous old mansion for clues, while secret passages and strange hints gradually point toward the fortune. You can feel her changing as greed slowly gives way to loyalty. David Niven adds warmth as Priory, the loyal butler desperately trying to keep the struggling estate alive. It is part mystery, part comedy, and part family drama, and it deserves far more attention than it gets. Before we continue, tell us in the comments how many of these forgotten Disney movies you have actually seen. And if classic film lists are your thing, subscribe now, because we have 18 more hidden Disney treasures ahead. Number 18. The Island at the Top of the World, 1974. There was a time when Disney spent serious money trying to create giant old-fashioned adventure movies, and this forgotten 1974 production may be one of the studio's strangest attempts. The story follows wealthy Englishman Sir Anthony Ross, who organizes an expedition to the Arctic after his son disappears. Joining him are an archaeologist and the captain of an unusual airship called the Hyperion. Their journey eventually takes them beyond the known world, where they discover a hidden community descended from Vikings. The most unforgettable moment is the arrival of the Hyperion over the frozen landscape. The strange airship floating above mountains and endless snow gives the film a wonderful storybook quality. Later, when the explorers finally enter the hidden Viking settlement, the movie becomes almost like a lost fantasy epic. The effects obviously belong to the 1970s, yet the enormous sets and physical locations give the adventure real scale. Disney hoped for something much bigger commercially, but audiences never turned it into a major hit. Today, that failure makes it even more fascinating. Number 17. One Magic Christmas, 1985. Christmas movies from Disney normally promise warm feelings almost immediately. This one makes you work for them. Mary Steenburgen plays Ginny, a struggling mother who has become exhausted by money problems and everyday pressure. While her young daughter still believes completely in Christmas magic, Ginny has almost stopped believing in anything good at all. That gives One Magic Christmas a surprisingly serious emotional center. Instead of presenting Christmas as endless lights and presents, the film asks what happens when an adult becomes too tired to see any wonder around her. The movie's most famous sequence comes when Gideon, a mysterious angel played by Harry Dean Stanton, begins guiding Ginny toward understanding what her family truly means to her. His calm presence is very different from the loud magical characters Disney usually creates. There are moments when the story becomes unexpectedly heavy, but that is exactly why the final emotional payoff works. For anyone who thinks Disney Christmas movies are always sugary and predictable, this forgotten film may come as a real surprise. Number 16. The Rescuers Down Under, 1990. Disney made an animated sequel before sequels became an automatic business plan, and somehow one of the studio's most beautifully animated adventures became almost invisible beside the bigger Renaissance hits. The story takes Bernard and Bianca to Australia, where a young boy named Cody discovers a magnificent golden eagle. After learning about the bird, a ruthless poacher wants Cody to reveal its location. A message travels across the world, and the tiny mouse rescuers are sent to help him. What immediately separates the movie from many Disney films is its huge sense of scale. The famous opening flight, with Cody riding alongside the giant eagle, Marahoot, remains breathtaking. He runs toward the edge of a cliff, suddenly rises into the sky, and the Australian landscape opens beneath him. It is one of those scenes where you almost forget you are watching drawings. The villain, McLeach, is also wonderfully theatrical, without becoming too frightening for younger viewers. Released between much bigger Disney musicals, this one became the quiet sibling of the Renaissance era. Artistically, however, it deserves another look. Number 15. The Black Hole, 1979. Years before Disney owned Star Wars, the studio desperately wanted its own massive space adventure, and the result was far darker and stranger than most people expect from the famous castle logo. A spacecraft crew discovers the enormous Cygnus hovering dangerously close to a black hole. Inside, they meet Dr. Hans Reinhardt, a brilliant scientist who refuses to leave. He claims he intends to travel directly through the mysterious phenomenon. Very quickly, the crew realizes the silent figures working aboard his ship may be hiding something disturbing. The movie's visual centerpiece comes when the Cygnus lights up against the darkness of space. Its huge Gothic structure looks less like a spaceship and more like a cathedral floating between the stars. Even today, the design is stunning. Then there is Maximilian, Reinhardt's intimidating red robot, whose silent movements create more tension than pages of dialogue could. The finale becomes almost surreal, as the ship approaches the black hole and reality begins to break apart. It may not be perfect, but few Disney productions have ever looked or felt quite this bizarre. Number 14. Return to Oz, 1985. Anyone expecting another cheerful trip over the rainbow probably discovered very quickly that Disney had made something completely different. Dorothy returns to Oz after adults in Kansas refuse to believe her stories. When she finally reaches the magical world again, she finds the Emerald City destroyed, its citizens turned to stone, and everything she remembers has changed. She soon meets a new group of companions, including Tick-Tock, Jack Pumpkinhead, and the strange flying creature Gump. One scene has become legendary among viewers who discovered the film as children. Dorothy enters Princess Mombi's Hall of Interchangeable Heads. Mombi keeps different heads inside glass cases and chooses whichever one she wants to wear. When they suddenly begin waking up, the sequence turns into one of Disney's strangest fantasy moments. Another unforgettable sight is the army of wheelers, human-like figures racing through corridors on wheels attached to their hands and feet. The movie initially confused audiences who expected something lighter, but its eerie production design has earned it a loyal following. This is Disney fantasy without the safety rails. Number 13. The Journey of Natty Gann, 1985. Instead of castles or magical kingdoms, this forgotten Disney adventure takes viewers into Depression-era America and tells its story through trains, forests, dangerous journeys, and a remarkably determined young girl. Natty becomes separated from her father after he travels across the country looking for work. Refusing to simply wait for him, she leaves Chicago and begins a long journey west. Along the way, she meets a young traveler named Harry and forms an unlikely friendship with a wolf that becomes her companion. One of the film's strongest scenes occurs when Natty secretly boards a freight train. The huge train yards, workers, smoke, and constant danger make the journey feel real rather than polished. She is not a superhero. She is simply stubborn enough to keep moving. The movie also gives its landscapes time to breathe. Mountains and forests become part of the story instead of backgrounds created for spectacle. Meredith Salinger gives Natty enough toughness to make the character believable without losing her vulnerability. For viewers who miss sincere adventure movies where the journey matters more than jokes, this deserves rediscovery. Number 12. Bedknobs and Broomsticks, 1971. Most people remember Mary Poppins, but Disney's other giant musical mixture of live action and animation has slowly moved into its shadow. Set during World War II, the film follows three children sent away from London, who discover that their reluctant guardian, Miss Eglantine Price, is secretly learning magic. Angela Lansbury plays her as nervous, determined, and wonderfully serious, even when the story around her becomes completely absurd. A magical bed becomes their method of transportation, taking them wherever they need to go. The famous animated section on the island of Nabumbu remains the movie's most playful moment. The human characters enter a cartoon world filled with animals, and David Tomlinson's Mr. Brown somehow ends up participating in a ridiculous football match. But the real showstopper comes later, when Miss Price casts a spell on suits of medieval armor. Empty helmets, shields, and weapons suddenly march together as if an invisible army has awakened. What makes the sequence work is that nobody is physically inside those suits. It is classic Disney imagination, built with practical effects, music, animation, and pure theatrical confidence. Number 11. The Great Mouse Detective, 1986. Before The Little Mermaid helped begin Disney's famous animation comeback, a tiny detective living beneath Sherlock Holmes was quietly proving that the studio could still create clever animated adventures. Basil of Baker Street is a brilliant mouse detective investigating the disappearance of a toy maker. The case leads him to Professor Ratigan, a wonderfully dramatic villain who wants to replace the Mouse Queen with a mechanical double. Vincent Price gives Ratigan so much personality that he nearly steals the entire film. The most famous sequence takes place inside Big Ben. Basil and Ratigan chase each other through enormous gears, spinning machinery, and the giant clock face while London waits below. The scale is brilliant because the characters are tiny. A simple clock becomes an enormous mechanical world. What makes the movie especially enjoyable is its speed. There is very little wasted time. Clues lead to discoveries. Discoveries create new dangers. And every character pushes the story forward. Without this film's success, Disney animation history might have looked very different. Yet compared with the princess films that followed, Basil's adventure is still strangely overlooked. Number 10. The Watcher in the Woods, 1980. Few people believe Disney once made a supernatural mystery this unsettling, and that alone makes The Watcher in the Woods worth discovering. An American family moves into an old English country house owned by the mysterious Mrs. Aylwood, played by screen legend Bette Davis. Almost immediately, teenage daughter Jan begins seeing strange lights in the woods, reflections that do not make sense, and signs connected to Mrs. Aylwood's daughter Karen, who disappeared decades earlier. Instead of giving the audience an obvious villain, the film keeps asking whether Jan is seeing a ghost, a warning, or something completely different. One of its most remembered scenes involves Jan standing near a mirror, while a mysterious image appears where her own reflection should be. The moment is simple, but that simplicity makes it work. The old house, dark woods, church ruins, and foggy countryside create an atmosphere that feels closer to a classic British mystery than a normal Disney family movie. The original production famously went through changes before release, which only added to its unusual reputation. Today it remains one of the strangest corners of Disney history. Number 9. Something Wicked This Way Comes, 1983. A carnival arrives in a quiet American town after midnight, and suddenly every secret desire has a price. That is the simple but powerful idea behind Disney's adaptation of Ray Bradbury's Something Wicked This Way Comes. Two boys, Will Halloway and Jim Nightshade, discover that the mysterious Mr. Dark is using his traveling carnival to tempt adults with promises of youth, beauty, power, and second chances. What looks exciting from outside slowly reveals itself as something much more dangerous. One unforgettable scene centers on the carnival carousel. Instead of simply providing entertainment, it can change a person's age, depending on which direction it travels. The boys watch as impossible transformations occur before their eyes, realizing that Mr. Dark can offer people exactly what they want, and then control them through it. Jonathan Pryce plays Mr. Dark with quiet confidence rather than constant shouting. Jason Robards gives the story emotional weight as Will's aging father, a man deeply aware of his own regrets. The movie is filled with autumn streets, storm clouds, empty nighttime roads, and glowing carnival lights. Disney rarely makes fantasy this moody anymore, which is precisely why it still stands out. Number 8. Flight of the Navigator, 1986. What would happen if a child vanished for only a few hours from his own point of view, but returned to discover that 8 years had passed on Earth? That mystery launches Flight of the Navigator, a movie that begins like an emotional family drama, before transforming into a fast, funny science fiction adventure. 12-year-old David Freeman falls into a ravine in 1978. When he returns home, everything is wrong. His parents are older, his younger brother is now older than him, and the calendar says 1986. Scientists soon discover that information about an unknown spacecraft has somehow been placed inside David's brain. The famous reveal of the alien ship is still wonderful. The smooth silver craft appears almost liquid, with no obvious windows or normal engines. Once David climbs aboard, the ship's computer, eventually nicknamed Max, takes him on a flight that becomes increasingly chaotic. One especially memorable sequence has the spacecraft racing across modern America while authorities desperately try to follow it. Behind the jokes is a surprisingly sad idea. David has lost 8 years that everyone else experienced without him. That emotional hook is why the movie remains more than another talking spaceship adventure. Number 7. The Black Cauldron, 1985. For decades, this was the Disney animated film people whispered about instead of celebrated. Inspired by Lloyd Alexander's Chronicles of Prydain, the story follows Taran, a young assistant pig keeper who dreams about becoming a great warrior. His life changes when the magical pig Hen Wen becomes a target of the Horned King, who wants to locate the mysterious Black Cauldron and use its power to create an unstoppable army. Taran eventually joins Princess Ilanwi, the bard Fleur Flamme, and the strange creature Gurgi on a dangerous quest. The most famous sequence is the Horned King's use of the cauldron. Green energy fills the chamber as skeletal warriors rise and begin moving. It was unusually intense for Disney animation at the time and helped give the film its controversial reputation. But beneath the darkness is a classic Disney story about a boy discovering that courage is not the same thing as fame. The movie struggled during its original release and became symbolic of Disney animation's difficult 1980s period. Yet its hand-painted backgrounds, ambitious atmosphere, and willingness to take risks make it far more interesting today. Number 6. Atlantis, The Lost Empire, 2001. Disney entered the new millennium and briefly decided that singing animals and fairy tale romance were not enough. Instead, the studio created a giant steampunk expedition movie about explorers searching for a lost civilization. Milo Thatch is a brilliant but ignored linguist who believes he knows where Atlantis can be found. When wealthy Preston Whitmore finances an enormous expedition, Milo joins Commander Rourke and a colorful crew aboard the submarine Ulysses. Their journey takes them deep underground until they discover that Atlantis survived. The arrival remains one of the movie's greatest scenes. After endless tunnels, machinery, and darkness, the explorers suddenly see enormous waterfalls, ancient structures, glowing technology, and an entire city hidden from the modern world. But the real surprise comes when Milo realizes the expedition is not there purely for discovery. Some crew members want to remove the powerful crystal that keeps Atlantis alive. That turns an adventure into a story about greed and responsibility. The angular character designs, huge machines, invented language, and complex mythology make the film feel very different from standard Disney animation. It may have been released at the wrong moment, but its ambition has aged extremely well. Number 5. Queen of Katwe, 2016. No magical kingdom is needed when a real-life story is this inspiring. Set in Uganda, Queen of Katwe follows Fiona Mutesi, a young girl living in Katwe who discovers chess through a local program run by coach Robert Katende. At first, the board is simply something new. Soon, Fiona's unusual ability becomes impossible to ignore. Medina Nalwanga gives the performance a natural quality, while Lupita Nyong'o plays Fiona's protective mother and David Oyelowo brings warmth to her coach. One of the movie's strongest scenes comes when Fiona begins competing against players who have far more money, training, and confidence. Sitting silently across from them, she has to prove that talent does not care where someone comes from. The chess matches are filmed so that even viewers who barely know the rules can understand the pressure. A single move can change everything. What makes the story especially effective is that success does not instantly fix Fiona's life. Her family still faces serious everyday problems, and confidence itself becomes something she has to learn how to manage. Disney released it without the massive cultural push given to its bigger franchises. That is a shame, because this is one of the studio's strongest modern dramas. Number 4. Togo, 2019. Most people know the name Balto, but Disney's Togo argues that another sled dog deserves far more attention. The movie tells the true story of musher Leonhard Seppala and his remarkable dog Togo during the famous 1925 serum run to Nome, Alaska. A dangerous illness threatens the town, and teams of sled dogs must transport desperately needed medicine across enormous distances in brutal winter conditions. Willem Dafoe plays Seppala as a man whose relationship with Togo developed over years of frustration, trust, and survival. The film's standout scene takes place on the frozen Norton Sound. Seppala realizes the ice beneath the team is breaking apart and drifting away from safety. Togo must pull the team across an increasingly dangerous stretch while the ice shifts around them. There are no superheroes and no magical rescue. The tension comes from weather, distance, exhaustion, and the bond between a man and an animal. Flashbacks also show Togo as an uncontrollable puppy who repeatedly escapes confinement simply because he wants to follow Seppala. That makes the later journey even more emotional. Despite being one of Disney's strongest live-action adventure films in years, streaming release meant many moviegoers never discovered it. Number 3. Treasure Planet, 2002. Disney spent years developing this strange idea. Take Robert Louis Stevenson's Treasure Island, move it into outer space, and build an entire universe where wooden sailing ships fly between planets. It sounds ridiculous. Somehow, it works. Jim Hawkins is a restless teenager who discovers a mysterious map leading to the legendary Treasure Planet. He joins an expedition aboard the RLS Legacy and forms a complicated friendship with the ship's cook, John Silver. Silver is secretly a pirate, planning to take control of the ship, but his growing affection for Jim makes the situation far more complicated. One of the film's most famous sequences is Jim's solar surfing through the sky. He launches himself on a futuristic board, racing past cliffs and energy trails, while the movie combines traditional animation with digital effects. But the heart of the story is quieter. Silver slowly becomes the father figure Jim has been missing. That makes their final choices surprisingly emotional. The movie was expensive and arrived during a period when audiences were rapidly moving toward computer animation. Its theatrical performance damaged its reputation almost immediately. 2 decades later, however, the hand-drawn characters, enormous space environments, James Newton Howard's score, and father-son theme make Treasure Planet feel like a lost Disney classic that deserved a much better fate. Number 2. The Rocketeer, 1991. Before superhero movies took over Hollywood, Disney made one of the most charming comic book adventures of the 1990s, and somehow it never became the giant franchise it seemed designed to launch. Set in 1938 Los Angeles, the film follows stunt pilot Cliff Secord, who accidentally discovers an experimental rocket pack. With help from his mechanic friend Peavy, Cliff learns how to fly and creates a helmeted identity that newspapers quickly named the Rocketeer. Unfortunately, dangerous people are searching for the same device. Billy Campbell plays Cliff with old-school movie star sincerity, while Jennifer Connelly appears as his girlfriend Jenny. Timothy Dalton has enormous fun as movie star Neville Sinclair, a charming public figure hiding much more complicated intentions. The unforgettable sequence is Cliff's first public rescue at an air show. He straps on the rocket, blasts into the sky, struggles to control his movement, and suddenly turns an ordinary pilot into a flying hero. Later, the climax aboard a giant airship gives the film exactly the pulpy adventure feeling it promises. Director Joe Johnston fills the movie with polished airplanes, Hollywood glamour, Art Deco machinery, and serial adventure energy. It did not explode commercially, but its style has aged beautifully. Today it feels like the superhero movie Hollywood forgot to copy. Number 1. The Straight Story, 1999. The strangest Disney movie on this entire list may also be the best. Directed by David Lynch, The Straight Story contains no magical kingdom, no animated sidekick, no giant adventure, and almost no traditional Hollywood spectacle. Instead, it follows elderly Alvin Straight as he travels hundreds of miles across the American Midwest on a riding lawnmower. After learning that his estranged brother Lyle has suffered a serious health problem, Alvin decides to visit him. Because he cannot drive a normal car, he attaches a trailer to his lawnmower and simply starts moving. The journey is slow by design. Along the road, Alvin meets strangers, sleeps beneath the stars, deals with mechanical breakdowns, and quietly reflects on family, aging, regret, and time. One of the film's most powerful scenes is almost unbelievably simple. Alvin finally arrives at Lyle's home after the enormous journey. His brother looks at the lawnmower outside and slowly understands what Alvin has done just to see him. Very little needs to be said. Another memorable conversation takes place beside a fire, where Alvin shares pieces of his past with a fellow traveler. The movie trusts silence, in a way modern family films rarely do. Richard Farnsworth gives a beautiful performance because he never tries to turn Alvin into a larger-than-life hero. His strength comes from patience. Disney has made bigger movies, louder movies, and far more profitable movies. But few are this human. So maybe the Disney library is much stranger than the famous castle makes it look. From flying rocket men and forgotten detectives, to dark carnivals, lost civilizations, sled dogs, and one man crossing America on a lawnmower, these films prove Disney has taken some surprisingly bold risks. Which forgotten Disney movie deserves a comeback? Tell us below, hit like, share this video, and subscribe for more lost classics Hollywood almost left behind.